We played this a moment ago. In that tape right there, that clip, you can hear that explosion loud and clear, and there appears to be more than one, where the Iranian state media reports that 100 people are already dead during the commemoration of the life of Soleimani, who was killed 4 years ago on this day. Trey Yinks live in Tel Aviv with more on that and the rest of the roundup on the Middle East there. Trey, hello.
Hey, Bill, good morning. We are following this breaking news out of southeast Iran, where a pair of explosions rocked the city of Kerman, killing at least 103 people. The blast taking place at a ceremony to commemorate the 4-year anniversary of the death of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. The explosions taking place near the cemetery where he is buried. Iranian officials are calling this a terrorist attack, but they did stop short of blaming anyone or any country. These developments out of Iran do come as Israel is bracing for the possibility of a retaliatory attack after a drone strike yesterday in Beirut killed Hamas's deputy chairman, Salah al-Aroukhri. Now, new aftermath video does show the site where that strike took place, with damage to both a building and a car. Lebanese media reports 6 other Hamas members were killed as well, including 2 commanders. And today, the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, made his first statement about that killing, calling his deputy a martyr, adding that he joins those killed in Gaza and those killed during the Al-Aqsa flood battle, what Hamas calls the October 7th massacre. Overnight, there was new rocket fire from Lebanon, but there hasn't been any large response to what took place in Beirut yesterday. Still, though, Israel remains on high alert.
The IDF is at a very high level of readiness in all arenas, in defense and offense. We are in a high state of readiness for any scenario.
The developments along Israel's northern border come as operations continue in Gaza. Israeli forces say they took out a militant that tried to plant an explosive device on a tank. They've also destroyed new Hamas cells in Gaza City using UAVs to take them out in a series of different strikes. Now, the focus for Israeli officials remains in Gaza, but they are keeping an eye on Lebanon tonight, where Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, is set to make an address to mark the 4-year anniversary of the death of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani.
Well,
Bill?
What a turn of events it is. Thanks. We'll follow it. Trey Yinks there in Tel Aviv. Thank you.
Despite the progress in lowering the number of homicides, we still have far too many senseless shootings, too much gun violence, and too many illegal guns on the streets of Philadelphia.
A new mayor of Philadelphia wasting no time declaring a public safety emergency over crime right after she was sworn in. Sherelle Parker takes over a city that's been plagued with rampant violence, widespread homelessness, and drug addiction. Jennifer Stefano is executive vice president at Commonwealth Foundation and a columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I know you love that city, and it must be hard to see headlines like this. This is about the drug crisis in Philly, that a new drug is worsening the opioid crisis. And they talk about Kensington as former addict warns epicenter of U.S. drug crisis descended deeper into despair in 2023, and that addicts in drug-ravaged Philly reveal gruesome risks to get high and that you could paralyze somebody. So there's the drug issue and there's the crime issue. You have a new mayor. Does she have what it takes to turn things around?
Well, we're all hoping that she does, but it's the drugs, it's the crime, and that's right. But there's 2 other issues. There's the economic issue facing Philadelphia with people leaving, and of course the education issue with the city having the most failing schools of any other county in the state of Pennsylvania. And she addressed this in her inaugural speech, saying that she does want to see more school choice, more opportunities for children in the city. And I think that matters as much. You know, you need to prevent these crimes from happening. You prevent future drug addicts as well as addressing the problem right there. So then I think overall she sounds good.
Yeah. So let me just show you call for number 2. This is the percent of people who live in poverty compared to other cities. Philadelphia at 22.7%. New York at 17%, and then across the U.S. that's 11%. So Philly certainly has a significant problem. One of the issues that we're talking about is crime. You have a shortage of police there. But one of the reasons you have a shortage of police is because you have a prosecutor in Larry Krasner, funded by George Soros originally, who does not prosecute the crime. So then you have a vicious cycle. Can she stop that?
Well, she has to do a couple of things. The first thing is she has to let cops do their job. She has to go and empower the police department to actually go after criminals rather than not. And even if Krasner's not going to prosecute, she needs to use her bully pulpit to go after Krasner, to keep up the public pressure on him and to educate the people in the city of what is happening. I think it's important to get higher voter turnout in the city and people more engaged for everyone to really understand what's at stake, and people will listen to Parker. You know, Kenny, he was such a failure on so many levels. Nobody listened to him, and he didn't use his bully pulpit. Parker must use her bully pulpit to go after the district attorney, Larry Krasner, a Soros-funded guy.
Last question. Do you think she has a broad enough base of support from the different factions within the city to have enough backing to make some tough decisions?
Yes, I think she is coming in with high political capital. I think she is appreciated. She had no opposition whatsoever. The Republican candidate really didn't mount much pressure. So she's been really working as the de facto mayor for the last year. And I think she has to come in and immediately implement changes. And she must, Dana, this is so important, has to use the bully pulpit to advocate against Krasner, to roll back the city wage tax, and to get lifeline scholarships for all the kids in those failing schools.
She seems to me like she's got a strong voice. She's got conviction. She looks like she's good at the podium, at the bully pulpit. So we'll see if she does that. And of course, she's welcome to come on Newsroom as well. Jennifer, thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Dana reads sports.
There was an electrifying finish in Iowa, the midterm, too.
Anytime, and we won't even ask you about the caucus, all right?
Nah,
we'll cut to that deal, right?
No politics.
But we are 12 days away from Iowa. Republican candidates making their final push. Is it now just a battle for second place? Good question for Governor Ron DeSantis, who will join us live next.
We've done Iowa the way people who have done well in Iowa have done, which is be on the ground.
That's 1-877-47-STEEL.
I'm Martha McCallum, and I will be co-hosting our coverage of Democracy 24. People in America don't mince words. They tell you what they think. They'll just say, oh, I hate that guy. Oh, I love that woman. She's fantastic. And that's what I find so refreshing when you spend time in the country talking to voters. And that's why it is a privilege to meet them and to let them inspire me to do my job in the best way that I can.
Breaking news this morning out of Iran. There was a terrorist attack, it seems. It has killed at least 103 people in the southeastern part of that country in a town called Krishan. There are 103 people killed so far, 141 wounded. It must have been a heck of a blast, yes. Bill. It was a ceremony to honor the slain General Soleimani. You'll remember in February of 2020, when President Trump was in office, Soleimani was in Iraq, and then he was no more. Mm-hmm. So that was big news at the time. And there's no one has claimed responsibility yet. I have reached out to a couple of sources, Bill and I have, and one of the explanations for this could be a nascent Sunni radical group. They recently did something like this at a Iran police station, Baluch militants doing that. So we don't know who is responsible, but we know it's a very significant event in Iran today.
Yeah, and the 4-year mark of the day that Soleimani was taken out upon landing in Baghdad. We're watching that. We're watching this, too. Back here in America, we talk about flu season because it's ramping up as people return from the holidays. Cases are spiking in most parts of the country, especially in the Sun Belt. Why is that? From Atlanta, Jonathan Seri might give us an answer. Good morning, sir.
Hi there, Bill. Well, you know, flu had become an afterthought during the height of the pandemic, but flu seasons are a fact of life once again. In fact, according to the latest CDC estimates, more than 7 million people have become sick with flu this season here in the U.S. Right now, 6.1% of outpatient visits are for suspected cases of influenza, and the figure is trending upward. About 73,000 cases have been serious enough to require hospitalization, and 4,500 people have died. Although COVID causes more severe disease to the average person, so many more people are infected with flu right now.
Flu is so dominant that there are more patients with influenza, milder infections that can go home, but also people that need hospitalization right now. So I would say right this moment, flu is causing more severe disease than COVID, but we can't forget either virus.
The CDC recommends everyone 6 months and older get an annual flu vaccine, but an alert from the agency last month warned of low vaccination rates, with about 36% of U.S. adults getting the shot as of November 11, compared to 38% the same time the year before.
It's never too late to get those vaccinations. And then practicing proper hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette. That's something we should be doing all year long.
And other advice, if you get sick, contact your health provider right away. There are antiviral treatments, but they work best if started early. Back to you guys.
Noted. Good to know. Thank you, Sarah. Jonathan Sari on duty in Atlanta. Thank you. Dana.
President Trump's attorneys formally challenging the decision to ban him from the ballot in the state of Maine. The legal argument behind that. Plus,
Iowa caucuses coming on fast, right around the corner, 12 days away, and Dana and I will be there to bring it to you. A Fox Business poll shows the former President Donald Trump with a commanding lead. Put your eyes on the far left of that screen. In that poll, he was at 52%, up 6 points from the poll in September. Ron DeSantis in our polling's got him at 18%. He joins me now, the Florida governor. It's sure nice to have you on today. Good morning to you, and thanks for being here. I know you're going to disagree with those numbers. Let me just get a few more out of the way. And this is also what that poll found. If you're certain to support Trump, DeSantis, or Haley, Trump is at 83% certain to support. And may change mine. He had the least at 16%. You're at 39 and she is at 43. You know, you've been to all 99 counties. You come to us west of Des Moines today. When you're making your pitch to caucus goers in Iowa, how do you contrast your vision with Donald Trump? What's different?
Well, first, we're excited by the support that we have. We've now topped 1,500 precinct captains who are going to actually be there on the caucus. This is what you have to do. It's an organizational, intensive effort, and so we've really put our mind to doing it that way. You know, what I have, I think that no other candidate has, is I have a record of delivering on 100% of my promises. If you look at all the problems in this country that the left is inflicting, from open borders to crime to the bad economic policies, I've beaten these people in Florida, whether it's the teachers unions, whether it's George Soros, whether it's the Democratic Party. We took a state that was evenly divided, and the Democratic Party now lies in ruins. We've shown how to win. You guys have been covering the issue with the Harvard president getting fired. I'm the only one running for president that's taken on the rot in higher education. In Florida, this whole idea of DEI, they say it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. It really stands for discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination. We eliminated it from our public universities. We are focusing our universities on the core mission of what academia used to be, pursuing truth and preparing our students to be citizens of the republic, not to be indoctrination centers. So I've taken on the left and beat them in ways that Donald Trump and other candidates just simply have not. And this is the do or die time for this country. We're in a period of decline. We need to reverse it. I'll get it done.
Got it. Let me come back to Harvard in a moment here. Here's a quote from the Haley campaign. If DeSantis doesn't win Iowa, there's no rationale for him to move on. Biden was fourth in 2020. That didn't stop him. You're going to do a debate.
Look, these people are trying to.
Yeah, I just want to get to the question. You're going to do a debate with Nikki.
They're trying to.
You're going to do a debate with Nikki Haley.
Exactly. We're going to do a debate.
Okay. On CNN.
We're going to do a debate, and we're going to be able to have a sharp contrast in our visions. And I think she's had very difficult time recently because she had been pumped up by liberal media, which I understand. She's the liberal candidate running. And now she's come under scrutiny, and she's not been able to handle basic questions that people are asking. She's not been able to defend her record as governor of South Carolina, where she was the #1 governor of bringing in Chinese Communist Party investment into her state. In Florida, I banned China from buying land in Florida. I kicked them out of our universities. So it's just a contrast in visions, contrast in records, and clearly Republican voters are going to prefer my vision to hers.
Okay, some are saying that's the battle for second place. I know you would disagree with that, but we'll watch and see what comes that night. And Donald Trump's going to do a town hall here on Fox at the same time. Now, you mentioned Harvard. You know the left and progressives feel that Israel is the oppressor. And we had a Harvard student on just this past hour. And we asked him if it weren't for the plagiarism charges, would she still have her job? And he said probably yes. What would lead a student, a Jewish student at Harvard, to draw that conclusion?
Well, because places like Harvard have been captured by a militant left ideology. And so it's not about academic excellence like universities used to be geared toward in this country. It's really about promoting their vision of so-called social justice. So it's got a massive endowment. It's basically a hedge fund with an indoctrination camp attached to it. That is academia run amok. That is not going to be successful for this country. They are not going to be producing the type of leaders that they may have been able to produce in the past. And so we've taken this on in Florida. We've said our state universities are funded by the taxpayers of Florida. They should be focused on things that are in the best interest of the people of Florida. That means we want academic integrity. We want merit-based academia. And we do not want discriminatory policies like DEI. So we stepped up and we did something about it. And you know what's happening, Bill? Places like New College in Sarasota, which we turned from basically a Marxist commune into now a mini Hillsdale College, we have applications going through the roof. There's a hunger for truth in this country. Parents don't want to raise their kids for 18 years and then have a university undo everything in 4 years. They want to go to a place where their kids are going to be able to prosper. Harvard, I think, has totally dropped the ball. I think the institution needs a total overhaul. And just as somebody that hires people, I see someone come out of Harvard, usually you would think, man, this is the best of the best. Now I just wonder what kind of stuff was put into their head in terms of this ridiculous ideology. And it's sad that that's the case, but they brought that on themselves.
You know, Bill Ackman's going after the head of MIT, and we'll see whether or not that's maybe the next shoe to drop here. Sir, thank you for your time. I wish we had more time today. We'll see you in Iowa very soon. Thank you, Governor.
Bundle up. It's cold out here.
We'll be ready. Thanks for the warning. We'll see you soon.
We have breaking news out of Iran. Back-to-back explosions at a cemetery killing more than 100 people. They were gathered for a ceremony marking 4 years since the death of General Qasem Soleimani. He was killed in a U.S. drone strike in Iraq in 2020. Tehran calling the blast a terror attack. There's no word on who is behind it. No one has claimed responsibility either. We will bring you any updates as we get them. But first, outgoing Harvard University President Claudine Gay may no longer have the top job, but she's still on the payroll and raking in the big bucks. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Dana Perino. Good morning.
How you doing? The first hour, you know?
Yeah.
We call this re-entry day.
That's for you.
You're right, but your re-entry was yesterday.
Yes.
My re-entry is today.
It's a little bit like walking on a high wire without a net.
Gotcha.
But I think you know what you're doing.
Once the first hour is done, we're back on the bike.
Okay, that's good.
They're good.
He's back, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. Controversy has been dogging Claudine Gay for weeks. First came her botched response to a congressional panel on whether or not calling for genocide against Jews violates Harvard's code of conduct. And then came multiple allegations of plagiarism in her work. But some on the left say she was just a victim of racism. Democratic activist Al Sharpton saying, quote, "This is an attack on every black woman in this country who's put a crack in the glass ceiling," end quote.
Others say her credentials paint another picture. Here's just one snapshot. The number of articles, essays, and published books in Claudine Gay's academic career are drastically lower than those of her three predecessors at Harvard. Sage Steele invoking a civil rights giant in her argument against race.
Al Sharpton pretends that he knows what every single person of color in this country thinks, believes, how they should live, how they should act, how they should vote. I just wish he would go away. Remember Martin Luther King, Mr. Sharpton? I think you do. Judge me by the content of my character, not the color of my skin.
Molly Line is reporting live from Harvard University. Hi, Molly.
Good morning, Dana. A mounting calls for her resignation came from alumni, from donors, from fellow academics, even from some students right here at the university. But not everyone is happy that President Claudine Gay has chosen to step down from her post here at Harvard. Gay's tenure was historically brief, just 6 months and 2 days, but also barrier-breaking. She was the university's first black president. Ibram X. Kendi, the founder of the Center for Anti-Racist Research at nearby Boston University, posted this. Racist mobs won't stop until they topple all black people from positions of power and influence who are not reinforcing the structure of racism. In announcing her resignation, Gay also touched on the allegations of plagiarism in her academic work, writing, "Amidst all of this, it has been distressing to have doubt cast on my commitments to confronting hate and to upholding scholarly rigor, to bedrock values that are fundamental to who I am, and frightening to be subjected to personal attacks and threats fueled by racial animus." Gay first faced backlash for her response to a statement from a collaboration of student groups blaming Israel for the Hamas terror attacks. Pro-Palestinian protests rocked campus. Wealthy donors dropped support. In December, when testifying before Congress, she failed to say that calling for the genocide of Jews violated university policies. Gay apologized, but soon faced expanding allegations of plagiarism.
Really striking that in her resignation letter, this lack of contrition, the lack of personal responsibility, saying that I am sorry for causing all of this. If she didn't want to be ousted, don't plagiarize.
So what is next for Harvard? Harvard Provost and Chief Academic Officer Alan Garber will be the interim president. Gay says she will remain, as you mentioned, a member of the faculty. An investigation, it is worth noting, continues. A congressional investigation is still ongoing. Dana?
All right, Molly Line, thank you so much. And Bill, she didn't have a very long tenure there. Started on July 1st. Okay, we have this here. She started then. October 9th came under fire for not condemning the Hamas attack. That was quite striking. Then you go on, and we won't read this whole thing to you, but basically she testifies in front of Congress about anti-Semitism on December 5th. And then allegations about the plagiarism started on December 10th. The Washington Free Beacon dogged in its reporting and investigation. But then you have yesterday, even after the holiday, when I think she thought all of this would get behind her, there was another allegation of an additional plagiarism piece, and so that's what was the straw that broke the camel's back.
I mean, drip, drip, drip. You had to ask yourself, when is the time going to come? That was the sense I had early on.
And hence it came.
Hence it came, yes, as we noted. David Portnoy was on with Brian a bit earlier today. Check this out. Watch.
These people dig their heels in, and they don't want to admit they're wrong or take responsibility. So it's a resignation. She gets pushed into another spot. But, it's really a safe face other than just being a straight, hey, you're fired. So whatever. It's still a victory. I do think there's still major problems.
Oh, I'm sure she wanted a job and wanted to hang on to it. She will have a job at Harvard. She'll make about $900,000 a year doing that in Cambridge.
Yes, she does.
As we have, right?
Yes. Many people get that deal.
That's right. Former President Trump, meanwhile, officially filing a challenge to reverse the decision banning his name from the ballot in the state of Maine. And an appeal against a similar decision in Colorado could be before the U.S. Supreme Court very soon. Rich Edson's watching all that in Washington, D.C. We're going to need a flow chart, Rich. Good morning to you. Let's go.
Yeah, we are, Bill. I think we have a few around here. Anyway, one appeal is in, another is on the way. In their filing to overturn that decision from Maine's Democratic Secretary of State, Trump's attorneys write, quote, President Trump is aggrieved by that final order because the secretary was a biased decision maker who should have recused herself and made multiple errors of law and acted in an arbitrary and capricious manner. Maine Secretary of State ruled the former president is ineligible for the primary ballot there because she says he engaged in an insurrection and violated the 14th Amendment.
I'm mindful that there's no precedent for a Secretary of State to deny ballot access to a presidential candidate for engaging in insurrection. I'm also mindful that no presidential candidate has ever engaged in insurrection.
Using similar reasoning, there are lawsuits in nearly a dozen other states to strike Trump from the ballot. Trump's Republican primary opponents have largely criticized these efforts.
I'm also increasingly concerned this year that you see a system that has decided one way or another that they're going to keep Donald Trump out of contention. I'm deeply disappointed by what I see. I'm deeply alarmed by it.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis also opposes removing Trump from ballots, though DeSantis maintains if a state kept one of Trump's opponents off the ballot, the former president would spike the football and cheer the decision. Trump still leads his Republican challengers by a significant margin. This morning, he secured House Majority Whip Tom Emmer's endorsement. That means the top 5 House Republicans in leadership there have all endorsed the former president. Bill?
Thank you, Rich. More to come. Rich Edson in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Dana.
Meantime, key voter groups are souring on the Biden White House, but the administration, instead of selling their own accomplishments, is heading into 2024 with its sights set on one campaign strategy. This is Talk More About Trump. James Friedman, assistant editor for the Wall Street Journal, a Fox News contributor. This is the quote from a CNN report that some of the younger aides on Biden's reelection campaign have been grimly joking about when to go full Hitler, when the leading Republican candidate's speeches and actions go so far that the Biden team goes all the way to a direct comparison to the Nazi leader. Haven't they already done that?
Yeah, and so their friends on MSNBC have gone even further.
Yeah.
Claire McCaskill, former Democratic senator, saying that Trump is more dangerous than Hitler. I mean, just absurd, obscene, really, these kind of comparisons. But this is... Every signal from the White House is this is what we're going to get. This is going to be a nasty, negative, ugly campaign presenting Mr. Biden's opponent as an enemy of this country. And it's going to be poisonous and hard to watch. And obviously, you've seen the polling. People have had enough of it and had enough of the president. And I think that's why he's going with this strategy.
Rest up when you can, James.
Yes.
Charlemagne the God made some major headlines 4 years ago. And now he's saying this about VP Harris. I've learned my lesson from doing that. Once they got in the White House, kind of disappeared. When I give people my word like, yo, man, I think we should be supporting Kamala Harris for vice president because she's going to hold it down. When we say those things and people don't see her holding it down, that causes issues. I take your pick. It could be the border, could be immigration, could be root causes.
Voting rights. I mean, I think that's what he's talking about, too.
Inflation, which has really hit real incomes everywhere. So I think sometimes I think celebrity endorsements can get overrated, but I think what's really interesting about his comments is he's talking about feedback he's getting from his audience. And it's obvious that a lot of people are, from what he's telling us, a lot of people are saying, why did you endorse them? And I think that tells you there are a lot of, his audience skews younger. So a lot of younger voters, we've seen that in the Fox poll, we've seen that in other places, are really soured on the president.
Speak of the devil.
Yeah, the USA Today poll showed that Biden's support amongst blacks and Hispanics are way down. Right now, 63% support. In 2020, it was 87% support amongst black voters. Hispanic voters, 65% in 2020, today 34%. Karl Rove showed us yesterday just the margins that President Trump or whoever the Republican nominee will be would need from blacks, Hispanics, and younger people in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, all of those swing states that Bill is going to be watching and telling everybody about on election night. You only need a little bit. And if you're at the White House right now, you have to look at something. How do you turn it around? Because it's not like it was Greg Gutfeld saying that about Kamala Harris. It was Charlemagne the God.
Yeah.
And no one's going to be calling him a sexist or a racist.
And wouldn't it be nice if the president's response was, okay, here's what I'm doing, and here's my agenda, and here's why life is going to be better, and here's why inflation is really going to die this year, and something positive. Instead, what we're seeing, and they're kind of telegraphing this for the first few Biden speeches, is it's going to be basically accusing Republicans of being white supremacists. This is some of the really disgraceful rhetoric of his presidency that he looks to reprise here, where suggesting that voting laws are a sort of a new Jim Crow. You know, I think that's kind of what they're foreshadowing for this upcoming set of speeches.
Biden's going to talk about the U.S. Capitol attack in Philadelphia. That's later in the week, and Kamala Harris is going to go on a national tour in Wisconsin to talk about abortion rights. Just real quickly on this. When Biden got back to the White House last night, he said, we got to do something on the border. They ought to give me the money I need to protect the border. I don't know about this money part, but that first phrase, we got to do something. Is something changing?
You wonder, could there be a better moment for him? Obviously, the polling says people are fed up. This is a problem. He's in the Fox poll, I think he's even worse on this than on the economy. He's got an opportunity here. He's not worried anymore about challenges from his left in the presidential nominating contest. He's basically keeping his opponents off the ballot in Florida and North Carolina. So he really is in general election mode now. And why not do a deal with Republicans? Big enforcement, more legal pathways. If he was really smart, he would say, we'll build the wall that Trump wanted In return, you give me all these policy changes. I'll bet he'd get a lot of them.
That'd be a major shift.
And also just leave the razor wire up. I don't understand. Like, take the win.
Take the win.
Thank you, James.
Thanks.
Happy New Year to you.
You too. Appreciate it.
Capacity, we're nearly out of room.
It will crush city budgets around the country. We're looking at about $160 million of potential costs going into next year's budget. That's almost 10% of our entire city budget.
So all three mayors you heard from there, New York, Chicago, and Denver, are all considered sanctuary cities. And the Democratic mayors now complaining about the migrants they once welcomed, as Texas continues to transport tens of thousands of asylum seekers to those cities. Chicago towns now eyeing plans to crack down on the buses. Raymond Lopez, Chicago alderman with me now. Sir, good morning to you. These towns are, I mean, they're much smaller than Chicago. It's Joliet, Illinois, the few others on here, Hinsdale, Buffalo Grove. I'm not sure exactly where they all are. However, what are they saying in those towns about these migrants?
Good morning. We are seeing about a dozen of our local suburban counterparts who are saying thank you, but no thank you to the migrants that are being shipped to their cities and villages after Chicago said that we will impound buses that bring any more migrants to the city of Chicago. They are now being dropped off in locations all around us and leaving it to our neighbors to then bus them or train them into the city of Chicago because they simply do not want to have to take on the responsibility of being the foster parents for these new arrivals. The city of Chicago has 29,000 individuals who have been sent here since this crisis really came to a head when Governor Abbott started shipping them throughout the country. And the one thing that we have yet to hear my Democratic counterparts say is directly to Joe Biden, fix this issue, secure the border, and stop sending these individuals throughout the nation. They refuse to say that because they're focusing on the next money grab, which is for billions from the federal government to go to these Democratic cities like Chicago so that they could cover their costs and, again, reimburse them for things not associated with this crisis.
Okay, yeah, you wonder what they do if they were living in some of these towns along the border in Texas. Henry Cuellar is living there. He represents that southeastern district, and this is what he said.
The border has been ignored. They're listening too much to the immigration activists. The White House and a lot of members of Congress and the Senate listen to the immigration advocates, but who's listening to the border communities? We're losing Democrats. They feel that the Democratic Party, that the president is not doing enough.
So, I mean, you're coming up in an election year, and the president said last night when he got back to the White House, we got to do something.
Well, I don't know what he's waiting for. That's a very good question, Bill. I don't know what he's waiting for because what he could do is direct Secretary Mayorkas to immediately start adjudicating some of these asylum claims, not wait 8 years, but do it within 6 months. He could spend the money to secure the border, to fix the holes, fix the gaps. He could work with Mexico to stop the influx coming directly from every other place on the planet, not just South America, but he's not doing that. And what we're seeing right now, and that Congressman brings up a very good point, which is, you know, particularly among Latinos and African Americans, they are getting very distraught over what they're seeing with the border, and they feel as though that their principles of wanting a secure border, secure communities, are being overlooked. And if 5 or 10 everyone wants to go to, it's just a question of how you get in. But what we're seeing from these individuals who are pushing their progressive extreme agendas is that they want to ensure that we have a second-class citizenry in the United States that is socially dependent upon government. And that's what they're trying to create and maintain for the next generation. They're not trying to fix immigration, because if they were, they'd try and fix it for the millions of undocumented Mexicans who came here looking for work but are being ignored. They're doing it for these individuals because they want to create a new caste system that is socially dependent and continues to fuel the need for all of these outrageous social programs for a whole new generation.
Well, you should have heard my taxi driver yesterday. He's from West Africa. He was going off. I was like, well, at least you're paying attention. Raymond Lopez, thank you for coming on today. We'll speak again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. Dana.
Iranian aggression putting pressure on the